Now the latest ITV News in London with Charlene White.
Tonight, the government pledges cash to reduce flooding in London. Just days ago, the capital was dealing with this, but it's set to happen again and again if changes aren't made. But will it be enough?
Climate change makes the rain heavy, and you need to be able to deal with this heavy burst of rain that's going to overwhelm the drainage system.
Breaking barriers for women and picking up a medal in the process. Mallory Franklin's family and friends on her Tokyo triumph. And Perry Shakes-Drayton, hey, will be joining us live to tell us what to look forward to when track and field kicks off tomorrow. And it's been a long time coming, the great welcome back to London's theatres.
We have something special to give you, and it's almost like an opening night for us as well. You know, the anticipation it's almost supernatural.
Good evening. It's the clearest warning yet. London's going to get hotter and it's going to get wetter. Weather forecasters say the damaging effects of climate change mean it's inevitable that temperatures will rise and flooding will continue. In the last month alone, we've had 2 instances of major flash flooding. And today, the government said they'll invest £350 million over the next 6 years for flood defence schemes here. But is it enough to help? Sam Holder reports.
From a temporary river running through Pudding Mill Lane station to cars nearly fully submerged on the North Circular. And this particularly grim scene in Notting Hill. The past month has shown us just how at risk London is of flooding. With climate experts warning extreme weather will become more frequent, the government is splashing out. Over the next year, £24 million will be spent on 50 flood defence schemes in Hertfordshire and North London, £75 million on 50 in South London, Kent and East Sussex. In total, over 6 years, up to £350 million will be spent on schemes in the capital. That includes flood defences in Stoke Newington, a new river in Norbury Park and replacing a tidal gate on the River Crane in West London.
It was devastating what we saw, that rapid flooding that rose in London last week. That was surface water flooding, and surface water flooding is something we're giving a great deal of attention to now, because 1/3 of all our flooding is caused by surface.
London is particularly at risk because there are so many roads and man-made surfaces. 50% of front gardens have already been paved over.
Our cities have been designed like drain cities, not like sponge cities. And what we really need to do is to find new ways to deal with that water, because climate change makes the rain heavy, and you need to be able to deal with this heavy burst of rain that's going to overwhelm the drainage system. And that's what we saw happening.
Like in Hackney Wick, much of which is built on a known floodplain. New data from the Met Office shows for the first time last year was in the top 10 hottest, sunniest and wettest years on record. They warn that will continue. Louise only moved into her new flat in Walthamstow last week. Days later, it was flooded.
A lot of personal belongings that have just completely gone to waste.
The climate change student says this is a sign of what's to come and that people like her with disabilities will be the worst affected.
Imagine you're a wheelchair user or an elderly person or maybe someone with learning disabilities, and you're suddenly trapped in your home. There's water coming in with no means to escape. You know, it'd be absolutely terrifying.
The government says their funding will protect around 300,000 homes across the entire country. In London alone, 1.3 million people already live and work in places at risk of flooding. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Jess Newman, who's a hydrologist at the University of Reading. Thanks for talking to us about this. It feels like London is in the perfect storm. We're building more, we haven't got that much space, we've got a Victorian sewer system and climate change.
Yeah, so you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. London particularly has lost a lot of its garden space for things like development for driveways, and we're definitely looking at something in the future with London's drainage system and the whole setup of London with an increasing population and space at a premium that's going to put a lot of people at risk with climate change.
Now, we haven't had any real detail about these flood defences that are planned for North and South London, but would it be anything like the Thames Barrier, for instance?
So the Thames Barrier is principally designed for tidal flooding. The defences, as I understand them, that will be planned over the next few years in London are going to be slightly more localised. Again, they're working still with this sort of like quite often hard defences, we call them, things that sort of are hard engineering like walls and levees. And what we'd really like to see as well is a real drive towards working with local people and implementing what we would call nature-based solutions. So working with the natural landscape to help try and hold some of this water back. And that's a lot of what we try and do with our research at Reading as well.
And that was going to be my final question, actually. Is there stuff that we can be doing as Londoners to try and ease the problem?
Absolutely. So as Londoners, as you've seen, we saw only at the weekend with the flash flooding, it can happen very quickly and it can happen in pretty much anywhere. People are being flooded that have not been flooded before. It's making sure that you know if you're at flood risk, and you can check this online. And if you are at a flood risk, you can sign up for alerts, and you can set up like flood kit preparedness packages so that you can get out quickly, check on your neighbours, make sure that people are informed and ready to move if flooding is going to happen.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Newman. That's been really helpful. It's been a pleasure to talk to you this evening.
Thanks.
A Metropolitan police officer filmed kneeling on the neck of a black man just weeks after the murder of George Floyd must reflect on his actions, the police watchdog has said. The incident happened in Finsbury Park in July last year and was shared widely on social media. The Independent Office for Police Conduct said the use of force may have been unnecessary and excessive. A teenager has been jailed for life for the murder of 17-year-old Jamali Malik Deacon Matthew, who was stabbed to death in November following a row over the payment of drugs. A 16-year-old who can't be named will serve a minimum of 16 years in prison. A Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre has been given the go-ahead to be built in a park next to the Houses of Parliament. At a cost of £100 million, the build was agreed following a consultation. But campaign groups are going to challenge that, citing the centre's environmental impact. Our senior correspondent, Ronke Phillips, has the details.
Community Secretary Robert Jenrick shows one of the country's oldest survivors of the Holocaust the designs. The plans, which include 23 large bronze sculptures and an underground learning centre, had previously been rejected by Westminster Council, but their objections have now been overturned.
We've gone through a very rigorous and robust process for over 10 years to determine the right place for this memorial, and now the planning application has been subjected to an independent planning inquiry, and the planning inspector's report was clear that this is the right place, in his opinion, to build the memorial.
But campaigners believe the memorial is being built in the wrong place and complain Victoria Tower Gardens, which is the only park beside the Thames in central London, will now be turned into a sombre, security-controlled space. The 6 groups who came together to fight the plans say they'll now appeal.
This park is in a conservation area and Grade 2 itself, and by building on this, a third of the centre of the park will be occupied by an underground chamber and an overground element to memorialise a terrible event in history, but will ruin a park and ruin the future at a time when climate change is high on the agenda.
And my youngest brother was killed in Auschwitz.
For those who survived the Holocaust, the location of the memorial right next to Parliament, the centre of democracy, sends a powerful message. 97-year-old Lily Ebert, seen here in her 20s in the middle of this photograph, survived Auschwitz. Her mother, younger brother and sister all died in the gas chambers.
It is first of all for us to remember. That is the first thing. But memorial, it says in the name, it is for the children, grandchildren, and generation what will come. That they should not forget, they should see what happens and should not forget what happened.
The inquiry agreed the need to educate future generations about the horrors of the Holocaust and the positives of the location far outweighed the loss of open space and security concerns. Work on the site is expected to begin later this year. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
Sport now, and the medals keep on coming for Team GB's Londoners at the Olympics. Mallory Franklin's picked up silver in the canoe slalom event. The medal's even more special for her because she'd pushed for this particular category to finally allow women to compete. Only men could do so before now. So her history-making turn in Tokyo was extra special for her family in Windsor and her training mates over at Lee Valley, as Antoine Allen reports.
Olympians either break records or make history. Mallory Franklin's silver medal achieved both.
Is she going to be the first to claim an Olympic C1 title?
This was the first time women were allowed to compete in the C1 canoe slalom. Mallory and her fellow female competitors' powerful performance destroyed the old broken record that women were not strong enough to compete in this event.
And that is a fabulous performance, recovers well.
The 27-year-old from Windsor had an anxious wait in first place until her time was bettered by Australia's Jessica Fox. Mallory's silver will always be Britain's first in history, but she's already focused on her next event.
For me, I actually have my senior selection for my kayak when I get back, so that's like next weekend. So I'm going to go and try and get in a kayak for the first time in like 2 months and see if I can make the senior team.
At home, Mallory's victory was watched by her childhood sweetheart. They met on the water, and since then they've trained together.
Just a massive privilege to help her along her journey. You know, like, we've known each other so long that it's really a combined effort, if you like, of helping her out, being there on the dark days, celebrating the wins, and just supporting her through that.
In 2017, Mallory became a world champion, but out of the water, she won a victory for equality. Alongside her female competitors, she campaigned for women to have equal canoeing opportunities at the Olympics.
I think her natural way of being is she doesn't see those barriers, she just keeps going. So before Sea Women was a class, she was competing against the men, for example. So she's really been a big part of pushing down those barriers and getting those girls out there on the start line today. And I think all of them can feel really proud for being that part of history, taking the start line.
Mallory's first coach says from the beginning, Mallory showed Olympic pedigree. Paul believes Mallory's success has inspired more women to get into the water.
Mallory's been such a trailblazer, and it's the number of kind of young girls in C1 and juniors that are really look up to Mallory, and they see what she's doing and what she's achieved, and it shows them that's possible.
Mallory's told her fiancé that she aims to compete in both the canoeing and kayaking events at the next Olympics. No doubt Mallory's goal is to bring home 2 medals from Paris.
This week's been brilliant, hasn't it?
Yeah, Mallory's medal was the 18th that Team GB have won in Tokyo. 2 of them were won by Maidenhead's Tom Dean. He found success in the pool, winning a gold medal in the 200-metre freestyle and the relay race. Once he dried off and got back onto dry land, he spoke to ITV News' team in Tokyo about his success and his golden time in Japan.
The last 48 hours, I can't even put into words. It's been like a whirlwind. I mean, my phone's been blowing up. I've seen all the videos of my family back home celebrating and everything. This is like, and on top of that, it's a dream come true. So yeah, it's just starting to become a little bit real now.
And hopefully the success doesn't stop there. We've got the athletics, which is literally starting the next couple of hours. People like Dina Asher-Smith will be trying to bring medals back to the UK.
Well, I don't want you to say any more about that because that's going to be down to our next guest. But Antoine, thanks very much. As he mentioned, track and field kicks off tomorrow. So to talk us through it is former Olympian sprinter Perry Shakes-Drayton. Very excited to be talking to you this evening, Perry. So Antoine mentioned Dina. She's the world silver medalist. What do you think her chances are of bagging gold this time round?
I mean, Dina performs at the high level And, you know, that's really important as an athlete. We've got to remember Asha Phillip, my good friend, she's also going in the 100 metres. So I'm excited to see what she does as well. Also, what people may not know, there's actually a mixed relay happening at these Olympic Games. So we're going to have some males and females mixing it up in the 400 metres. And that also kicks off tomorrow.
That's unusual, isn't it?
Yes, because usually a major event like a World Championships or Olympics actually ends with a relay. But this time it's at the beginning, the mixed relay. It's going to, 4x4.
Oh, well, I know that you've got little young Matthew at home with you there. Will you be up in the early hours of the morning tomorrow to watch the track and field kick-off?
You know what? I will be. Honestly, yes. Matthew probably will be my alarm clock that I won't even have to set. But yeah, I'm a true fan. I'm proper excited. I mean, in the past with Olympics, you know, the 2012 I competed, I was just focused on myself. So I wasn't really invested in the other events. And then, you know, 2016, I was injured and I kind of was like trying to avoid anything Olympics because I knew I should have been there. But now I'm retired, a mum. And, you know, I've been watching all the sports with Matthew. His eyes have been glued. We put all the children programs kind of on hold for him to watch these athletes.
Let's just say, you know, you've been through this before. I know it's a very different Olympic Games, but what do you think the athletes will be going through tonight before they head to their heats tomorrow?
I mean, they're definitely going to have the nerves, but you know what? In terms of a crowd, I know I strive for a crowd, and them not having the big, loud crowd and support behind them, you know, in the stadium, it's going to be very different. But they're going to have to concentrate on what they have to do and know that they've got family and friends all tuned in. Everyone around the world is tuned in, watching to see their performance.
And do you think emotionally, do you think they're quite nervous at the moment, or are they just focused on just doing their best?
They're definitely nervous, and they're probably not going to sleep the best. I know you'll be thinking about all the different types of emotions, what could happen. Yeah, you just want to get on the track, really.
Yeah, well, I know that we can't physically be there cheering them on, but we wish them the best of luck anyway. Perry, as always, an utter pleasure to see you and to speak to you.
Thank you.
OK, still to come, we'll have the weather, plus... Lights on, curtains up, the West End bursts back into action. But first, for 17 years, it's helped launch the careers of countless Londoners and given us some truly classic TV moments, creating some true stars along the way.
London's got the X Factor! I have the X Factor! All of my dreams.
Yeah, let's get them out. It's One Direction!
Oh, some classic moments. But today it was announced that the X Factor is no more, with ITV confirming it won't be coming back. But one of those whose talent was spotted on the show is my Loose Women colleague, Brenda Edwards, and she joins us now. Hey, Brenda. Now, you're on tour with Hairspray at the moment, and it's fair to say your brilliant stage career possibly wouldn't have happened had it not been for X Factor.
Absolutely. I know that's very cheesy. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here, but that is the fact as far as I'm concerned. I was an accounts payable manager for years, over 20 odd years, and then I auditioned for the show. And then out of that, I got my West End career started with Chicago, and then We Will Rock You. And now, as you say, I'm in Southampton with the Hairspray UK tour. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful for everything for that platform and that opportunity that it gave me.
And what was it like being suddenly catapulted into the limelight when you were on the show?
Well, when I did it back in 2005, it was an animal. The show was an animal. It was in its second year, but it was nowhere near the beast that it grew into now. And it was very scary every Saturday night getting up there and knowing that you're singing in front of millions of people. And the nerves, they never left me. When I was singing on stage, people say I might have looked calm, but I was like a swan on the top of the nose, swimming my legs at 100 miles an hour. So, it's sad to hear that it's going to be no more because of where I came from with that.
Yeah. Do you think there's still a place on the TV landscape for those kind of reality shows that launch stars in that way?
I think there is definitely a platform for some great entertainment on a Saturday night. And just from everything that everybody's been through and from doing the show and coming back with the theatre shows, you can see how much people want live entertainment. So I think there is definitely, there's going to be that gap. Somebody's going to try and fill it, you know. Let's see who's going to fill that one.
I've never asked you is, what compelled you to apply to go on in the first place?
I was actually just in the right place at the right time. I was staying at the Hilton Belfast, and I came down for breakfast, and there was a massive queue going all the way around the building. And my ex-partner that I was at the time, he went and spoke to the researchers and says, my wife thinks she's a bit of a bird. She thinks she can sing. Can she join the queue? And I joined the queue for hours and hours and hours, like 10, 12 hours. Then I had to come back the next day for another audition, and it all, as they say, the rest is history kind of thing. Yeah, so that's how it started for me. You know, I gave up my job as an accounts payable manager.
That's an amazing story of being in the right place at the right time, and your star needed to shine, and it did. Brenda, thank you so much for talking to me, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, darling.
Now, many of us have spent a lot of time over the last year or so getting used to online meetings and virtual events. But as we all know, some things just work better in person. And tonight, the Sundance Film Festival returns to London, offering the best pictures from the cinema over for the next 4 days. Martin Stew has been to find out more.
Film festivals feed the frenzy and build a buzz to get bums on seats.
Any excuse I can to get here.
Tonight, Sundance London returns after last year's event was held virtually to an online audience. This is the first film festival back in London since the pandemic began. And with furlough coming to an end, never has there been a more important time to breathe some life back into this industry. Between March and December last year, UK cinemas took only £8 million, just 5% of normal ticket sales. Doors have all reopened, but some are still staying away.
We need audiences and we need the public back in the way that they were in their numbers before in order that we can kind of keep moving.
Is it a case of use it or lose it?
Yeah, I think that's right, exactly. And of course, you know, the streamers and, you know, watching films at home is incredibly important. That it's very egalitarian, it's great for access, but, you know, we want this in-person experience. It's just so important, and it's important for our industry to stay alive, yeah.
The only thing that will redeem mankind is cooperation.
The director of Shaun of the Dead, Edgar Wright, will watch his new film, The Sparks Brothers, with an audience for the first time tonight.
Being in an audience with strangers is an entirely different experience to watching it at home on your own. And so that's never gone away from me since I saw my first movie when I was 3 years old, and I don't think it ever will.
If you get on a tour bus with a bunch of musicians, eventually the conversation will go to Sparks.
The documentary about an American pop rock duo is a departure from Edgar's usual style.
So I kept saying out loud to friends, hey, why hasn't somebody made a documentary about Sparks? Sparks would make such a great music documentary. And eventually one of my film director friends called me on it and said, you should make the documentary on Sparks.
We didn't want to do the standard documentary full of talking heads. It would become too dry.
Was that their idea or yours?
That was my idea, but they were very game. When we were doing the trailer, I was like, we have to use that bucket of water gag, otherwise I would have thrown it in their face in vain.
Sundance will showcase 15 indie movies over the next 4 days. Box office sales, though, will always rely on big stars.
Yeah, I got it.
Tom Cruise, one of many Hollywood actors currently filming in London. The good news is more films are being made here at the moment than ever before. They just need us to pay to watch them. Martin Stew, ITV News.
A stone's throw away from the Picture House are the many theatres of London's West End. For the last 16 months, the lights have been off and the curtains mostly down. But this week, one by one, they've been reopening, much to the delight of audience members and the casts and crew, as well as Rags Martel has been finding out.
This sound is back. Silenced for 16 months. Tonight, The Lion King returns.
It's been a long time. We want you to be there. You know, we have something special to give you. And it's almost like an opening night for us as well. You know, the anticipation it's almost supernatural.
Yes.
it's unbelievable. It's like a first night for us.
Even rehearsals have been emotional. This was the moment the cast reunited after a long lockdown. Actors needed to take a breath before breaking into song once more.
Very emotional indeed. You know, it was our first day at the rehearsals, and to seeing everybody else coming together, and also what we've been through the whole year, where we missed basically performing, doing what we love the most, telling the story, singing and all that. It was just another feeling to see each other again.
While other West End shows have already reopened, the sheer size of The Lion King stopped it returning sooner. 150 people are needed on and off stage for each performance.
It's not just us on stage, we have crew, we have makeup, we have all the kind of technical departments as well. That helps to make The Lion King what it is.
Here it comes, thank you, Steve.
Meanwhile, over at the Barbican Theatre, they're filling the stage with a full cast of 50. And being back is special for even the most seasoned of performers.
Do you know that opening preview was probably the most moving thing I've ever experienced, when that band struck up and the lights went down?
Yeah.
It's an incredible moment for all of us. I got to stop weeping. Every night I've wept, literally, in the wings. I never thought we'd get to this stage.
I never thought that what I did for a living would not exist, you know? I just never, so I feel like every show is precious, and I'm just trying to savor every single moment.
And a full house welcome back to Phantom of the Opera this week, restarting its 35-year run and breaking boundaries.
It was amazing to feel accepted, especially being the first black woman to play this role in the West End and on Broadway. And if my younger self could see this now, she would be screaming inside with pure joy and happiness.
You struggled during rehearsals. How are you going to feel tonight doing it for real?
To be honest with you, I'm excited and nervous, but it's a beautiful nervous, you know what I mean?
Interrupted by lockdowns, the West End is now back in full voice. Rags Martel, ITV News.
Gosh, I don't know about you, but that made me feel quite emotional. It's great to see the West End back. OK, let's take a look at the weather now. Here's Philippa Drew with the forecast as we head into the weekend.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello there. It's all looking very changeable over the next few days, remaining very unsettled showers or longer spells of rain, the ongoing risk of some thunderstorms, and continuing to feel on the fresh side. But a storm is already brewing out towards the west. Storm Ava will track its way steadily eastwards through the course of this evening, tonight and tomorrow. Some yellow Met Office warnings coming into force around the south coast, just fringing the London region. But even without the warnings, it still will be a very windy picture. So through this evening, largely dry and some clear spells initially, but it's as the night wears on, we start to see signs of that storm moving in. Cloudier skies, outbreaks of rain, some of that rain quite heavy and persistent, and the wind starting to whip up as well. So a rather wet and a windy start tomorrow. I think gusts in the region of 40 to 50 miles per hour. The rain will clear and then showers will follow in behind. Some of those showers could well be heavy and locally thundery. It remains windy into the afternoon, and that will make it feel much fresher than the temperatures might suggest. But Storm Ava will gradually work its way out into the North Sea through the course of Friday evening and into Saturday, and that will leave us with a fairly showery setup for the weekend. Some of those showers will be heavy, with the ongoing risk of some thunderstorms too.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
Well, admittedly not great news on the weather front for many, but better news if you're suffering from hay fever. Grass pollen season is now drawing to a close, and the unsettled conditions will ensure levels stay low over the coming days.
That's it from us for now. We're back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Coming up, Mary's got your ITV Evening News, but for me and the rest of the London team, bye-bye.